Welcome to the Wrong Kind of Music podcast. I'm Wayne, this is Phil, and we're back again to talk about the Belfast metal scene as we always do. We're coming around full circle. The podcast always started off talking about Metal to the Masses, and Metal to the Masses 2022 is just about to kick off. It's Tuesday night now. The first gig's on Friday the 28th?
28th,
Friday 28th February. January. And we're going to talk a little bit about the competition as a whole. Then we're going to talk about some tips that we would give to any bands that are entering. And then finally we're going to focus in on Heat 1 and Heat 2, maybe make some predictions and see how they go. So before we even start off that, how's things, Phil? How you keeping?
Oh, dead on. Just, glad to be getting back to these gigs again.
Yes.
Fair enough, I've only been without them now for probably about 5-6 weeks maybe, but it feels like an eternity.
It was the weirdest fucking thing having those, like, what was it, 2 months, 3 months?
Where there was so much happening.
Where it was just bang, 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 gig after week after week after week. And I was excited about getting the podcast back, doing all this again.
It was 9 in about 5 or 6 weeks.
And then the rug got pulled from beneath us.
And now it's all open.
And then it's gone, and now we're back. So, God knows how long it's going to be before something happens again that we end up getting restrictions put back in place. I don't know, but
let's hope not. Let's just keep rocking and
I would say in the meantime, just fucking enjoy it while you can.
Exactly.
Yep. So Metal to the Masses. The way we're looking at it this month is there is going to be 5 rounds with about 4 or 5 bands in each round, and then we're into the semis. After the last Metal to the Masses, which I think was 2019, as in the last actual one that took place.
Yeah.
Certain bands got so far in that one, so they're getting an early slot straight into the semis.
It was early 2020.
Was it?
Yeah, we got like the first load of
was.
Rounds done, and then we ended up with a good few already through. I think this year there's a bit of a change of format actually too.
Yeah.
But yeah, because there's a wild card heat in there as well.
That's true, there is, yeah. So all the bands have been announced. We're not going to sit and list them all off. If you go onto the Distortion Project's Facebook page, you'll see the posters. You've probably seen it already with all the bands listed. Phil, what do you reckon? How do you think it's looking?
Well, I mean, I think already it's starting to shape up with the people that are already through. There's enough heavy hitters in the group of 6 there that you're going, this is going to shape up to be a hefty run-in at the far end of the competition. I mean, you've big guys in there, that we have sort of, I want to say championed recently in the last podcast there. Survivalist, we're kind of and Hint, we're thinking these guys are doing quite well, but we've also got some sort of veterans really of the competition in there. I think there's a lot to be said to have been to have played it before. In that I think Psychedelic not have been in there, and Victim Royal as well, and nearly went Royale, but Victim Royal are in, and then we've also got like big returners of Senescence as well. And Pure Sonic Outcasts, who have been putting the work in recently, with live streams and getting music out there. So it's like
definitely
they've been working hard.
I think, as you say, there's those big hitters. There's the bands that we know well, the Senescence, Survivalist, Victim Royal, etc. Psychedelic, Pure Sonic Outcasts. I think it's the newcomers that are starting to excite me. There's a few bands on there that I don't recognise or didn't recognise until I started doing a wee bit of homework and looking into them. And I'm talking about bands like Minor Inconvenience. Never heard of them before. Started listening to them, and they're what I would call fuzz rock. I don't know if that's even a thing. Am I just making up genres now?
They're all made up at this point.
It's sort of like a stoner desert sort of rock with just a really, really heavy fuzzy tone on their guitars. I think they wouldn't be out of place supporting Elder Druid. I think they'd be really good on a bill with them. And I think they could potentially be a dark horse. I think they're the sort of band that we've talked before about how the second vote, everyone comes down and votes for their mates, and then they vote for like whoever's next.
Yeah.
And that vote's a really important vote. I think they're the sort of band that could get that vote,
No, I totally agree with you, and I think that whenever you're you're looking and you're looking for somebody new to come through. They weren't there last year. They weren't even down to play last year. They've released some stuff. I've listened to it, and you've listened to it. And we both agree that actually this is pretty good. It's pretty fun, and it's a lot of real heavy, chunky fuzz. Nice bass on it, and I think you're on the money there. It's like they would not look out of place in a Crypt of the Riff.
Definitely.
That's where they would be great for that.
There's a band on the bill called Imperial Demonic. Now they've only got one song up. It's on SoundCloud, I think.
I think so. Yeah.
It's black metal, and there's no vocals, but it does say it's a demo. So I don't know if there's going to be vocals or not whenever we actually get there. But it's Cameron, who is in Darkest Era over off. May not be pronouncing this right, but is it Celticore? I'm unsure. But I think sometimes when there's a band comes out of nowhere like that, but then you realise it's someone who's experienced and has been in other bands, has gigged, has recorded, has probably toured,
won the competition.
Yeah, that's true.
So
yeah.
There's somebody coming out of this just with a good bit of pedigree, good bit of experience. They know what the competition's about. They know what it takes to win it.
I think that's someone to watch out for. If I was in the same round as them, I'd be kind of like
quietly
fuck. So I think that's definitely an interesting one. I'm trying to think who else is on. There's a few other ones. Gravity Well, or a band who I have seen on posters. I don't know how many times. Like really familiar with the name, but realised that I've never seen them. Never really listened to them and checked them out over the last couple of days, and really liking those as well. Kind of like stoner, doomy vibes, wee bit Sabbathy, but female vocals. I really like them. I really like them. Looking forward to seeing them.
Yeah, Gravity Well, I think I've caught them like a good number of times in this competition, and I think possibly in one of the Crypt of the Riffs as well. I actually think they're a really really good band, and that slow pace is good there. But I think one thing that they're going to have to contend with this year, and it's not, I think they've replaced their singer recently. And I think in a band like that, replacing your singer is one of the hardest things you'll ever do. So I think time will tell how the new singer gets on. Having said that, actually they released a cover. I think possibly just before Christmas there. Not entirely sure. With the new singer, and sort of reasonably well recorded, produced, and it sounded pretty good, bang on. So I do look forward to actually seeing them again. Sort of one of my sort of favourites in past years that sort of maybe didn't quite get where I wanted them to get to. So I hope that they show up this year and can put a good showing in.
Yeah, lots of rock bands, and as much as I don't want to hear it sound like a broken record, because we've had this debate every single year. I think we've come to the conclusion now that there's no debate to be had. There's rock bands play at Bloodstock, so there's no reason that a rock band can't enter this competition. But do you think there's any chance of a rock band winning this? Or do you think they're kind of...
I think it would have to be an exceptional rock band to manage to... and again, it's not convincing us, the crowd voting, getting to that final. If you're a rock band and you get to that final, the hardest convincing that you've got to do is of Simon Hall, who is picking this, this metal festival, putting it together, and it's convincing him that you're a rock band that deserves to be there because rock has been done almost. It's like, why are you different to and England specifically for rock? England is, that is their thing. I think we do metal better. They do rock better than us, and that's just what the way it is. But I think certainly it's an even taller ask for a rock band.
Yeah. We talk about is any rock bands got a chance of going through this? There's a band on it that I'm buzzing to see them because I absolutely love them. But again, their genre is just, it's going to make things difficult for them in terms of winning it. Now I know not every band plays this competition with the idea of we want to win. But the Skunts are playing, and they're like a folk punk band, and they're fucking great. They will stand out like a sore thumb alongside whoever they're playing with. But I love them, they're brilliant, they're so likeable.
But again, that's kind of what gets you through, and in a way, there's a unique selling point there. In they're doing something nobody else dares touch, or has the kind of the bravery to go out and do it. And sometimes you do see that on that on that stage. Sometimes you see it on the New Blood stage. There's somebody just a bit quirky, a bit different, and they did something, and all of a sudden Simon's went, I quite like that. That's all right. Actually, I could have a bit of that on a Sunday afternoon, or something.
Sweet. Is there any bands that you think should have been on this that aren't?
I think there are definitely a few local ones, standout ones that maybe you're just missing, and it may be just back end of pandemic, all that kind of stuff. Not having to practice the time, and maybe just like committing to this competition is committing to potentially playing about 3 or 4 gigs in a very short period of time, and if your members aren't close together and it's a bit of an organisational task to get them to play, it can be tough. But I think certainly some of the I'd love to see Next Catcher there. I think they put out an album last year that would be worthy of being played at Bloodstock. I just thought it was an absolutely fantastic album, and these guys have done the work, they've done the hard bit, they've wrote the songs, they just need to go out and get them performed. They're the biggest omission for me on this one, but I think there's a few more there too. But
I think Nevney would have had a hell of a chance of winning this had they been in. Now I know it was a scheduling thing, and they wanted to play it, and they just couldn't. Real shame about that one. I've always thought, I don't think Draconis, have they ever entered?
I think they possibly did 1 year.
Again, another band that I think have the potential to win it. I think they would, in terms of the festival, I think they fit right into Bloodstock. I really, really do. I think that there would be a band that would benefit a lot from playing Bloodstock. And
I've never seen them and they've half-assed it. They've never come on, and like you're not again. It's one of these bands. They're not going to play a bad show. They're a fantastic what they do. Album out last year, never got to launch it properly, or 2020. Sorry, never got to launch it. Was it 2020? What was 2020? I think it was. Yeah, didn't get to launch it properly, and still sitting there waiting to be gigged. And I think again, professionalism in that band too. And I think you're right about Nevney. I think the thing that I would have been worried about if I'd seen them on the bill was that haven't seen them, haven't played, and are they rusty around the edges. If the crawling gig in December is anything to go by, are they fuck? They blew the tits off everybody in that room, and they were fucking exceptional. And I think another heavy hitter to add to that list of ever growing bands that could win this thing.
Few that I'm surprised aren't there. I would have thought Ravenlight would have went in for it. Symphonic metal from Belfast seem to be getting a fair bit of traction. I think they're the sort of band that are pushing themselves on a sort of a worldwide through the internet rather than honing in on the local scene.
Sort of a European.
But to back that up, a Slaughter Bloodstock would surely help that sort of thing. Machina Core, I'm surprised aren't in there. That's two of the guys that used to be in Senescence have started a new band. They got quite a good reception from the Metal Cell podcast. I'm pretty sure Richie said he really liked the stuff they were putting out. And then one of your favourites, Molar Bar.
Yeah, indeed. There's, again, it's probably a selfish thing, but you can never have too much Molar Bear in your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And on the verge of releasing a new album as well. I don't think it's far away, and the teasers for this new video that they've recorded or anything to go by, it's going to be absolutely ridiculous. But I think that's what I like about it.
If Molar Bear are listening, we would love to like preview that one. Despite the fact that I wasn't entirely complimental about the last album initially, but I mean that thing grew on me, and I absolutely love it now.
Absolute cracking album.
Superb album.
But I would love to see them. You know, and I'm gutted I'm missing them supporting Survivalist.
Yeah, March 4th, isn't
March
it?
4th, yeah.
And then one last band that I would kind of like to see on the bill, but I understand why they're not, is Enshroud. Enshroud they've put out an album last year, but they still haven't come out and said who they are or anything or where they're from, or we just know that there's a band from Northern Ireland putting out music under the name Enshroud. And I don't see how they could play metal to the masses without giving away their identity, and that seems to be a pretty important aspect of what they are and what they do.
And and I think even the clues in the name a wee bit, you know, Enshroud, but you know, definitely again put out a really tight, you know, album last year. I think we talked about them previously, and you know, came out, started with a couple of singles, then a full album came, and you know that was it was astonishing, like a really good album.
I have to confess, I listened to the album once through and thought, yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
But if there's no opportunity to hear this live, if it's not going to be gigged, it goes to the back of the queue. And I know that's not necessarily a healthy way to treat music, but to me the live experience is intrinsic with the music that I listen to, and no live show means I'm just less interested in what you're putting out.
Certainly in the local scene, I get what you mean whenever you say that. You sort of become more invested because you want to learn the songs so that you can see them at the shows and stuff like that. But I think I've probably done a wee bit more research into who Enshroud are than I would care to admit. I'm like, that's a unique looking guitar, that looks like a Solar.
I'm not joking. I literally was taking notes before because there was a photo they put up and you could see what pair of trainers they were wearing. They were wearing Adidas trackies, and I spotted the trainers and I was like, I'm making a note of that.
Yeah.
Walking around gigs, like looking at people's trainers and stuff.
I know.
You in the shroud.
I'm like, who in this? Who in Northern Ireland owns a Solar guitar, you know, or whatever. I'm pretty sure it's a Solar.
So moving on then, I mean, not that we're experts or that we're in bands or anything and we can tell bands what to do or how to play their gigs, but in fairness, we've been going to these Metal to the Masses shows since it started in Northern Ireland. I think I even went to a few Dublin ones prior to that. So we kind of know the score of what's going on here, and we thought we'd just give like a few tips, or what we think would be good tips for the bands that are playing, more towards the newcomers and the bands that don't necessarily know what the score is. So Phil, first tip, what do you think for bands playing this competition?
Bring a crowd.
Definitely.
Bring support. Bring your mum, your dad, your granny.
People have done it.
You know, and
We've seen it.
Bring them down, because what's going to get you through those early stages and into the more competitive heats is going to be the crowd vote and the numbers there. Mm-hmm. So you know, all those people coming down and giving you the fours and all that kind of good stuff is like that tactically. That makes a lot of sense. So if you're new to this competition, or if you're new, even some of these bands that are on here are practically new to the scene, never played the scene in Belfast yet, because, well, certainly some that I've seen, and just say, look, come down this once,
mm-hmm.
Come see us, support us.
Guilt the fuck out of your mates
yeah.
to come down to the show. Absolutely. I think some people do sort of underestimate how important the crowd vote is. It is 50% of the vote, or at least the last time I understood how the voting and stuff worked, it accounted for 50% of it. So absolutely, get your mates down, drag them down, promise to go buy them beer, all sorts of things, because it helps, really does help. Second thing I would say is, don't just go to the heat that you're playing in. If you're serious about winning this and you genuinely want to beat the other bands and get the bloodstock, don't just go down to the heat that you're playing and ignore the rest of it. Get down to the other heats, see what bands are playing, see what they're doing, how they're playing, how their sets are structured, and because you could end up against them in the semi-finals or the finals. And it's just, I think it'll really, really help, especially if you're watching bands with more experience, bands the likes of Senescence and guys in like Hound and whatever, guys that have been gigging for a long time. There's a lot to be learned from watching other bands, I think.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. And it's, even if you can, and it's not, necessarily the gig, part of the competition, like if you have a chance to check out a past winner or something like that,
Yeah.
and they're getting scarcer, I suppose, at the minute, just, if there's I don't think there's any gigs announced for past winners in the near future, but check them out too.
Likely will be, I would say, because the final isn't until late April, I think.
I think it's May. I think it's the end of May.
It's right in the May. Yeah, so between now and May, there's bound to be gigs by the likes of Lockhorns, Oracle, possibly the Crawling. Maybe not, because they only play Belfast so often.
Yeah.
And then Elder Druid and Overoath is the last one. Actually, managed to remember them all the winners.
And I just don't know that, I don't know if overall they're still going or not going. It's been real quiet. I don't think they've had anything or any activity since about 2019. I think the last possibly played a Crypt of the Rift or something then one time. But actually a band I'd love to see come back because they're cracking.
They are.
And I think there's a few more wee tips as well. I think one of the other ones is rehearse a set, don't rehearse your songs. It's get that half an hour, craft your set to fit it, and then try and limit those inter-song reactions. So like the inter-song pauses, where you're trying to tune up. So try and get your set with a nice flow and play that. Like, don't play your songs individually. Go into your rehearsal room, play your set.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that, and it's something I don't know what it is, but it really jars on me whenever you're standing at a gig and you get that awkward silence between songs. And it's one thing doing it at just a regular gig, but doing it at a show where you are in competition with other bands, where you are trying to be the best band.
Yeah, you
really need that. You need your set, not just your songs. It needs to flow, and those little awkward sentences, they can be so easily filled with just a guitar tone or a sample or something to just keep things, some noise in the room, some ambience in the room. I think it's a massive thing. I think it really, really separates bands from who look like amateurs and who look like professionals. One other thing I would say is don't get hammered. And I know that's rich coming from me, but I genuinely think, if I was there and I was judging it, if I was any of the judges on the night, or if I was overrepresented Bloodstock and someone was necking Buckfast on stage or stumbling about or whatever, I would immediately think I don't want that person playing my festival, because it's really, really quick turnarounds on that new Blood stage.
Right.
It's a long day, and there's 15 minutes between every band, and it is work. Those guys, we kind of witnessed them. What's going on? Elder Druid were telling us about the sort of what happens backstage. You don't need the hassle of dealing with someone who's hammered.
No, and it's
in that experience, in that situation.
I think even you're touching on another good point there actually as well, which is the setting up, making sure that you know exactly what you're doing, how you're setting up your 100%. Gear. When you get there, you won't have that comfort of milling about and just leisurely putting your gear and getting your gear ready on stage. You won't have that. Even in this competition, you won't have that. It's 15-minute turnaround, which is pretty much what it's near enough is a Bloodstock anyway. So just make sure you know how it all goes together as well.
Don't be standing at McDonald's ordering chicken nuggets 2 minutes before you're meant to go on, in other words.
Yeah.
And if you are, can you bring me some back?
We're getting burritos maybe.
Burritos, need them on stage. Yeah. Who would do that? Right. I think that's as much wisdom as we can
if you can call it
pass
that.
On to say whatever bands are playing. Let's talk about round one. Round one looks like, I think, a decent round. We've got Archives, metalcore band from Belfast, I believe. Blurred Reality, we'll talk about them in a bit. We've also got Farmwolf, who we spoke about recently, played with Survivalist and Worn Out in the Speakeasy. And we've finally got Like a Hawk. Have you listened to Archives?
I have done. I was that album out there probably in the last 2 months called Decay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's some pretty good stuff. It's kind of scary that there's always somebody else just going, you know, another one. It's a DJ Khaled, like it's just another one and another good band to add to an already stacked, pretty much, you know, the guys that are already through. If these guys can get through as well, you know, it's
there's a little circle of bands within Belfast who I always thought never really played like the metal scene or the scene that we go to. They seem to have their own little circle of bands and their own circle of fans, and I think it's bands like Hills of Achilles and the like. And I never particularly liked any of those bands. Didn't think they were bad bands, just not my cup of tea. They were all the style of metalcore to me that just goes a wee bit too, you know, one dimension.
I think
Is that the pop band? I've just got the name wrong, totally, haven't I?
One Direction.
One Direction.
No,
yeah.
But I don't even think. No, I think that like there's certainly the pop element of it that comes into that metal, and like to be honest with you, the market for that is absolutely huge.
Oh, it is. It's massive.
You know, I think that you can just see that with, you know, as you sort of say, the bands that, you know, have they don't need our help, almost, is kind of like how it looks from our point of view, but we're kind of like, come and play for us because we'll still go and see you, you know.
So whenever I heard about Archives, and it was like another metalcore band from Belfast, and I recognised one of the guys in the band, Adam, who used to be in a band with Gavin from No Great Loss, and right now I cannot remember the name of that band. We used to go see them loads, and it was like right in the day when metalcore was just like becoming a thing. So I kind of honestly, I wrote them off. They done an album launch party, and I didn't go to that because I just thought, man, another Belfast metalcore band. I was speaking to Mark from Rock and Load. He said he listened to the album and said it was actually really good. Yeah. And I'm kind of like, I'm sure it is. And then I put it on, and it is really good. Yeah. It's hard and it's punchy. It's really punchy. The sort of the vocals that I would call poppy vocals never go into that sort of the kind of style that makes me cringe, if I'm completely honest. It stays heavy, or at least stays, it has balls throughout, even though it is very melodic. And I really enjoyed it, and I think they could be a real dark horse. I think I've used that phrase already, but I'm using it again. I think they could come out and surprise a lot of people. Yeah. Especially if they've got, I think what it hinges on for me is their own stage presence. Like if they come out, I can't remember, again, another metalcore band from way back in Belfast, and I remember them being very sort of timid on stage despite having really aggressive music. If Archives are ballsy on stage and they can come out and perform those songs as they sound on record, I mean, without doubt they'll go through round one without a shadow of a doubt.
I don't think you're wrong. I don't think you're wrong at all. Punchy, it's got a lot of sort of attitude behind it, and I don't think that these guys are going to disappoint us live. I just don't think that that's going to happen. You know, from sort of the reviews of the album launch gig that I read, like,
I regret not going there. Should have been there.
It seemed like they had a good time, and they kind of wrecked the place in a roundabout way. And it also seems that they got, you know, bear in mind there's a couple of things with this. This is a Wednesday night in Belfast in Voodoo. It's a band that has never, to my knowledge, played before. It's an album launch of an album I've never heard before, and it's a tenner in. You know, I'm not going to garn about a tenner, like, do you know what I mean? But like, there's quite a lot there that's going against you, and by all accounts, it didn't really matter. Because I think a tenner in is a fair price for a gig these days. But you know, they got a crowd and they had a good night. And I think, again, if you can get a crowd and you can promote it right and do everything right, they sail through that heat.
I think the other thing that they've got going for them, and I've talked about this a billion fucking times, is that they're young, you know. So whenever they're trying to get their mates to come down to the gig, their mates don't have to get babysitters and all that shit, you know. I think people should definitely lean into that. You know,
it's the whole premise of the competition. It is, you know, metal to the masses. It is the new blood stage. It is these new bands, these guys that come out of nowhere and just do something. You go, fuck, that's good. Yeah, here actually. Yeah. So I think that they're on the money there with that one.
And I think I'd love to see a metalcore band go through and win. I know that there's been, can't remember if I've seen any metalcore bands as such. Definitely seen some deathcore bands on the new blood stage last year.
Yeah, deathcore.
And it's coming back with a vengeance. I actually said to someone the other day that I can't even fart these days without someone mentioning Lorna Shore. You know,
yeah, that's true.
There's a lot of it out there. Even the other day, like I've started paying more attention to like New Album Friday when all the new albums come out, and I think last Friday there was something like 4 deathcore albums out on the same day, all reasonably big albums. You know,
yeah.
I think your guy, is it Alex Terrible from
Slaughter to Prevail? Yeah.
Again, having that sort of YouTube presence and stuff is just blowing up as well.
As well as that, like, you're the biggest metal figure in all of Russia. You know, you've got anybody that listens to metal in Russia is going to be listening to that album.
Yeah. So while metalcore and deathcore isn't my thing, I've just always been a fan of music moving forward rather than constantly looking at the past. You know, and I think in terms of big festivals, I think it's really, really important. You know, as the older guys get older, stop going to festivals, the young kids are coming through, they're not going to want to see Sabbath style bands or Maiden style bands. Well, maybe some of them will. I think that's a wee bit unfair, but I think generally there's a trend towards new modern music, you know.
And there's plenty of it out there.
Yeah. Next up, Blurred Reality. I listened to a bit of Blurred Reality and I thought they were decent. Initially I wasn't sold. Initially I listened to them and thought, I'm not digging this at all. In my opinion, they're sort of like, musically there's a wee bit of like Megadeth and a bit of Iron Maiden in there. It's very standard metal, but the vocals are like grungy, sort of maybe Alice in Chains kind of stuff.
Yeah, it was the vibe I got, like, was kind of in that 90s sort of grungy era. Like, I kind of felt that's, you know, not too far away from where it landed, but with metal elements. It's actually quite interesting whenever you describe it out loud, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, you know, again, had a bit of a listen there. We always do, and I wasn't 100% sold on it. I just thought there's just something possibly missing here, and I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it. But again, I think they're a kind of band that actually could probably deliver a wee bit live. You know, it's possible that they
potentially
can do that.
Yeah. Now I know that I don't think they've gigged a whole lot. I don't think there's a lot of like material or footage of them out there. Mm-hmm. So again, there could be a band that just surprised the fuck out of us.
Exactly, and I mean it's happened to us before.
And I know that they're from County Armagh, if I'm right. I think yeah. And I know that there's a lot of wee bands, and they'll play pubs and bars down in spots like that, and it must be a good experience for them to come up and play somewhere like Voodoo, because I do think that the quality of sound in Voodoo and dealing with a really good sound engineer and stuff can take your live show to another level. So it'll be interesting to see them play. Next one up is Like a Hawk. I've skipped over one, but we'll come back. Like a Hawk. Did you listen to Like a Hawk at all, or have you seen them before?
Well, I think they played the competition.
Did they?
Before, yeah, and again they fall under this this banner of that, you know, rock genre,
mm-hmm. Yeah.
and I think actually I actually think they're pretty all right live.
Oh, okay.
You know, which is you know, grand, because like I'd happily watch them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think I don't know. Worst album cover?
the artwork.
Like, I just want to say that, like, but
whenever you're going to check out a band, like, you know, I've done this a million times.
Yeah.
Like, there's bands I've looked at and just went, well, I'm not gonna like those. Parkway Drive is actually a really good example. I remember the first time I seen photos of Parkway Drive, and I thought they looked like a bunch of douchebags.
Yeah.
And it was just, there was no chance I was going to listen to this band, and then it did, and absolutely loved them. So there's occasions where you judge a band by the cover.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And they have a CD cover which is it's a close-up of a man's crotch with a fly down, but there's like a hawk sticking out where there could potentially have been something else.
It's called Release the Hawk, I believe, is the album.
Yeah, and I personally think it's horrific. I really dislike it. So when I seen that, I'm already on the back foot. I'm already like, what the fuck? And then I listened to it, and I have to confess, this is not my jam. This is not my thing at all. I found it very, very corny. Now, probably intentionally so.
I think with an album cover like that,
yeah,
like, you know.
I do think they're self-aware.
Yeah,
I do think that they're going for that. Musically, the closest thing I could come up with was Kiss. It sounded like the sort of, like the cheesy, almost disco side of Kiss.
Do you reckon it's cock rock? Is that...
Well, cock rock fits with the cover, doesn't it?
Fits with everything that we've said there, so...
Hot cock rock, it's not for me. I'll give them like with all these bands, I'll watch them when it comes to the live show, and I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But I don't think Like a Hawk are my jam at all. And then finally, Farmwolf are the last band in Heat 1. Farmwolf are a band that I missed the last time I went out. I literally went to the gig, didn't watch them. I've said before, I think their first EP is hit and miss. I think their second EP is a huge improvement, and I'll definitely give them a shot this time and actually watch them. So I'll hold off before making any judgment there.
No, I've listened to sort of the whole back catalogue there for, you know, after seeing them with Worn Out, because actually I really enjoyed that. I thought they were great, and the you know, I think, you know, they have said themselves, we don't know where we fit. We're another one of these bands. I think like Divides Unfold, we said the same thing about them. Mm-hmm. They don't know whether they're rock or they're metal and where they fit. Mm-hmm. And well, my, you know, response to that is that, well, come to us because we'll gladly take you. You know, yeah, and certainly, like, you know, I think recently their 2021 they released sort of a 4-track EP, I think it was, called Your Weapons, Your Words, and I think it's a very, very good, you know, very good EP, and I enjoyed listening to it. So, and there's a nostalgic guitar tone to it. There's something about it like that sort of bridges that. It's there's a the first song, I can't remember what it's called, begins with A. But it hits a guitar tone that transports me to 2001 or 2000. It's just, there's something about it, and it's not that music sounds like it, but it's the tone, and I'm really attracted to it. So it's good.
I think we've almost answered this question already, but of those two bands then, who do you see going through from that round?
I think the two that I see, it's I think Archives, you know, can't not go through if they play that album like it's meant to be played. You know, and that's just, I think they're a shoe-in. I think between the other three, I think the it's Farmwolf for me without a shadow of a doubt. I think what they're playing is what I like to hear, and certainly based on the fact that I have seen their live performance recently, like I know that they're going to be good. You know, and that's fine for me.
I would totally agree with that. Archives and Farmwolf. Be surprised if that isn't the case. I think that's your two winners of round one. But we've been wrong many times before. Many times. There's been some quite dramatic occurrences of us being wrong, where we've been incredibly wrong.
There's been a couple of times we've had to chaperone James out of the place. It's been that controversial.
I think there has been a few times where, like, you know, the winner's been announced and you're just, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, a couple of angry mums about the place.
Definitely. But it should be a good night, and it's our first gig since before all this shit happened. That was back in November, wasn't it?
No, it was 10th of December.
10th of December, so about a month and a half since a gig, so it'll be good to get out. Dry January? Or are you having a beer? Putting the pressure on here.
I don't know. I'll make a decision on the night. I think. I'm kind of thinking it's still going to be dry January.
Right.
Maybe dry February as well, mostly. But
right. That's good. You can give me a lift home then.
Can do. No worries.
So the next podcast we're going to do will probably be somewhere between round 2 and round 3. So we're gonna preview round 2 as well, and then we'll do round 3 onwards next time. 4 bands. Is it 4 bands in round 2 or is it 5? Five bands in round 2. So it makes it a wee bit tougher for those in there. We've got 12 Gauge Outrage from. I've just got South of Ireland because that's what their Facebook says. Their words, not mine. Gravity Well, Minor Inconvenience, Svetcamp, and Trauma Hound. Interesting thing about those is there's 2 bands there, Svetcamp and 12 Gauge Outrage, that are from South. And we've talked about this before as well in previous years, that there's bands come up, and I've never understood why. I've no problem with it, no beef with it, but I'm not entirely sure why they're not entering the Dublin event.
It could just be as simple as, you know, the Dublin heat just gets filled up real quick, and you know, if you're not on the ball, you know, when you're in 2 minds, you've lost out by the time you're maybe a scheduling thing where they can't do that date, so they can't do it, so they come up here and do this one. Potentially, but there's also a thing there, you know. It gives you an opportunity to come up and play to Belfast, you know, as well, and you know, you're still competing in the competition. You're maybe coming up, and you know, if you manage to progress through the competition, you can get yourself in there and you know, do 2 or 3 gigs in Belfast in a very short period of time, and get a bit of a following, you know, up here as well. So, you know, again, more the merrier for me, definitely. You know, if anybody wants, because we used to always have Tombs used to come up.
That's true.
And I used to, you know, marvel because, like, it's quite a long way for them to come up there, coming from Cork. So, you know, it's a long, or Cork or Limerick, I think actually they were Tombs are from. But coming the whole way up from there to Belfast in one night is serious. Like, it's commitment
to play a half-hour set.
So you know, it's I don't think anyone's doing it out of the, you know, they're not coming up here because they're going to get an easier ride, you know, or anything like that.
No, I definitely don't think that's the case. I think a couple of people have sort of implied in the past that, you know, Belfast, it's an easier competition, and that we don't have as good a bands as Dublin. It's a hard thing to quantify and say whether that's true or not. But look at the bands we've put through. Yeah, you know, we've put Elder Druid, Oracle, Lockhorns. They're not bands that are kind of like, oh, I guess that's the best we've got. Yeah. You know, they're exceptionally good bands. So if you come up to Belfast, that's who you're going up against. You know. Yeah. No. Totally agree. So going through these bands, first of all, 12 Gauge Outrage, thrash band. Personally, seen them a few times, and something about the music doesn't quite click with me. I think in terms of the style of thrash they have, it's just not as in your face as I would like my thrash to be. You know. Yeah. Okay. But that's just my opinion. No. Don't think they're particularly a bad band. They just don't work for me.
Yeah, I think my problem with them the last time was the stage show. I didn't get on with it. I think the music actually I get on with, you know, okay. I think actually it's, you know, it's grand. I had it on there, and I've absolutely no problem with it at all. But the thing that always just creeps into the back of my mind is I just remember one thing about the show when it was introducing everybody on the stage. This is our drummer, this is our bassist, this is our on the lead, on the rhythm. Annoys me a lot. Yep. Right. You know, annoys me a wee bit, you know, at this thing, but at the same time, like, I think, you know, these guys are they're there to have a good time, and they do have a good time, and to the extent that one of them ended up in hospital after last year. That's right. But you know, hopefully there won't be a repeat there. But I do. I think, you know, look, if they come out maybe are a wee bit more serious about, you know, the competition, and maybe play a wee bit more seriously and take it a wee bit more seriously, they could probably do actually reasonably well here. Yeah.
Then second up in round 2 is Gravity Well. We already talked about Gravity Well at the start of the show there.
Yeah.
As I say, I've been really impressed from what I've heard from them. I'm buzzing to see them live, so I'm really looking forward to that set. I think you're in the same boat.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can't wait to see them. I think certainly, again, another band there that kind of fall into that Crypt of the Riff sort of like should be in that kind of, and they have been, I think, actually.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah.
And then again, another round 2 band, Minor Inconvenience. We talked about them earlier.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of fuzz rock. Again, can't wait to see it. Can't wait to see it live. I really hope those 2 bands deliver. I really hope they sound as good on stage as they do on record.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Because just really good stuff. Svetcamp are an interesting band. Technically, they sound incredibly proficient from what I've listened to. Musically, it's not my thing. It's a wee bit too. Would you say they're mathcore or math rock?
I think it's more that experimental, genre of stuff out there, and it kind of seems it's a wee bit too off the wall for me.
Yeah.
I struggled to get through the 2019 album. And again, with that kind of music and actually that genre in particular, you don't get it in the first listen. It takes a while, and I just maybe haven't spent enough time with it to unpack it and get what I want out of it. So I think for me, the time that I had given it wasn't enough, and I certainly wasn't getting it on initial listens.
Now there's bands like that I've listened to on record, and you kind of go, no, maybe not. And then you hear it live, and it's a different story. So again, I've said this about other bands, that I'm just going to reserve judgment. I'm going to wait and see how they sound on the night.
These guys have been about,
They have.
They aren't newcomers, and they've been about for a long time in the Irish scene, and I just cannot see that they're going to come up, play in Belfast for, I don't know, I certainly can't recall seeing them on a bill. Potentially one of the very few times, possibly the first, that they have played, up here. And they're not gonna, it's not gonna be a bad set. I just don't think that's gonna happen. They've been around for so long, on the Irish scene, played enough gigs, across the country. We've probably played the Siege, I'd imagine, at a point. These guys aren't newcomers, and they're not coming to disappoint us, I don't think.
I think they were on a bill in London not too long ago.
I think you're right, yeah.
In the Underworld, and I think it might have been, don't quote me on this, but I think it might have been with Acid Rain. But I'm not 100% certain. So they're getting gigs across water, and I mean, it's just one of those ones. Hold out, see how they play, and take it from there. And then the final band that night is Trauma Hound. Phil, did you check out Trauma Hound?
I did. They've a number of YouTube videos up and SoundCloudy style stuff, and I don't know what's going on. Right? It seems that there's a couple of things, right? So I think that it sounds like it's been recorded in the room. They've played in the room, and then they've recorded it next door. Because I don't know the substance, the actual, and they describe themselves as industrial, but the substance, the rhythm and everything that's kind of in there, it just seems to be too low. I can't hear it, and there's a large amount of distortion over the top of it. It's kind of more white noisy than distortion almost. Yep. It's kind of hard to listen to. It actually just seems like, if you've seen those noise guys that have like the decks and just like get in a dark room with strobe light and just like hit white noise and bit like that. But the thing about it is if that's how it's recorded, it doesn't mean that you're still not playing guitars. So whenever they manage to get up on stage, and I doubt that that's going to sound anywhere near like it sounds on that recorded. Like I think there's going to be, like I kind of think there's going to be a bit of chunk behind that. I can't see that it sounds like it sounds, live. I just don't see that happening.
Yeah,
I think there's more to it.
I hope there's more to it. I checked out one video that they have up on YouTube, and it was industrial music pushed to a degree that I find uncomfortable to listen to, and doesn't retain anything worth listening to. That sounds really fucking harsh, and I don't mean it to be that harsh. But it is, it's really, really sort of aggressive distortion on top of noise with some music.
Yeah.
And if that's your thing, I know a lot of people are into that, there's that harsh wall noise, which is basically just, as you say, white noise. I've seen videos before of people kicking drum kits around the room and then getting a standing ovation.
Yeah.
So there's an audience for all this
For everything.
sort of stuff. And as you say, there's a possibility that the live performance doesn't necessarily reflect what we're seeing on YouTube. But fuck, I don't know what to expect. I really don't.
And I think that's actually kind of reasonably exciting in a way.
Kind of, yeah.
What am I going to see here?
Uh-huh.
What's going to show up in front of me? I believe the boys are from Tyrone or thereabouts, County Tyrone, and sort of it's, they're going to come up here. I've never heard them. I don't know if they played a gig before.
I have no clue.
No idea. And like, again, it's one of these. It's the unknown, which kind of is what this is about. Sometimes
there is always so much unknown in metal to the masses. I know that, like, for the vast majority of times that you hear about a new band, right? You go, "There's a new band. Who's that?" And you go, "Oh, it's Steve that used to play for such and such, or it's Dave that used to be in that band."
Yeah.
And there's so many people in so many bands that are crossing over and starting new bands and new projects and stuff. Every time something new comes along, it's someone we know. Usually Geordie, but not always.
Yeah, we made a joke about that.
And this Trauma Hound, to say it's an unknown is just massively unknown. I don't know what to expect. I really don't. There was a band before, Metal to the Masses, that were kind of like a funky jazz metal band.
Do you remember that? Was that Diamere?
No, they were more out there than that. They were more, they dressed up silly, and we talked about this in the podcast back in the time, they done their own poster for the Metal to the Masses round and stuff, and it was like done in like Microsoft Paint, and it was awful, and it was almost like everything they'd done was just trying to be crap. And
I can't remember who that is. I'm going to have to find out.
Yeah, I'll take it out. It was grim.
Yeah.
I'm really, really hoping that Trauma Hound aren't that band this year. I don't think they will be, but we'll see. It's an interesting one. But that's it. I mean, this is going to be a really hard one to predict because there's 5 bands, and I would say I'm comfortably familiar with one of them. So who do I think's going through? I would put my money on Gravity Well and Svetcamp. That's who I would bet on. What about yourself?
I see it a wee bit differently. I do, and I kind of see, I think, a good bit of thrash. I think everybody likes a good bit of thrash. I think 12 Gauge Outrage are a wee bit of an outside chance there. Like, I definitely think that they come and they deliver. There's there's definitely a bit of chance there. My proper, like, again, I think that's an outside chance there. I think, listening to Minor Inconvenience, I like them a lot. I think they're definitely, I think that could get through.
I'm going to retract mine, and I'm going to agree with you, actually. Yeah, I'm going to say Minor Inconvenience and Svetcamp.
I think Gravity Well as well are a bit, they, again, I like that kind of style of stonery slow stuff, and they're well, I've said differently sometimes on this podcast, but I like their brand of it, and I think it's very, very, like, it's kind of that trancey, psycho, kind of stuff that you listen to and you're like, yeah, cool, just you can sit there and enjoy it. So I'd quite like to see Gravity Well go through with Minor Inconvenience, but I think that again, not being familiar with Svetcamp and the pedigree, the history that they've got, you know, I think that they could be coming and putting a bit of putting a bit of a sort of a cat amongst the pigeons in that heap there, you know. I definitely think that that's going to be an interesting dynamic to that heap. So it's going to be one of the most interesting heats, I think.
Definitely, yeah. As I say, I think it's the trickiest one to predict. Yeah. Or at least so far, anyway. That's Metal to the Masses. That's our initial thoughts, anyway. Stick a comment below if you're watching this on YouTube and tell us what you think. Is there any bands that you think are going to do particularly well, or any bands that you're sort of supporting or pushing and hoping that they do well? One band I didn't actually mention was Acid Age at the start, because I think they have a really good chance.
I think in their heat there's a couple of them.
Their heat, I'm looking forward to talking about their heat, because I think we have already dubbed that the heat of death.
Heat of death, and we'll get there.
Okay.
We'll reserve comment for now.
Yeah. Before we wrap things up, apart from Metal to the Masses, because I know a lot of people actually don't like the fact that Metal to the Masses sort of
interrupts the schedule.
It does, yeah. It's kind of overshadows everything at this time of the year. Over the course of, say, the next month, February, are any gigs coming up?
We've got Survivalist. Survivalist, I think it's their album launch.
That's 4th of March.
4th of March coming out. That's with Neon Empire and Molar Bear in the Students' Union. Again, I'd like a venue that I actually really quite like. I just wish the stage was slightly bigger. I think that's actually a comment from the bands I've spoke to that played there too. So there's that. Same night in Dublin, there's a big gig too, which
I'm kind of gutted about that they clash. I was just posting about that on Facebook before it came out. So the gig in Dublin is Worn Out, Bitter Pill, Untamed, and one other band I forget the name of, but they're another hardcore band. So it's a hardcore show. Like it is 3 hardcore bands, and it just
spin kicks and windmills.
It will be. It most definitely
at
will
dawn.
be. Yeah.
But I think then another delayed or album launch rather is the Raven Light gig there. I think it's in and around, I want to say, the 27th of February. And again, that's another one. I'm not going to be in the country for it, and I'm actually a wee bit annoyed to be missing it, because you know, again, they're the only people in probably the island that are doing symphonic metal. You know, so I always, and I think they do it really well too, so I kind of think that I want to support them in that, and you know, keep them going forward. You know, I think there's a few more there that we're gonna there's probably more stuff to be announced, but you know, I think those are the only ones again that I can think of at the top of my head.
There was a gig we talked about this last time in McHugh's that I think's been rescheduled, but I can't remember the date for when. But it's Pure Sonic Outcasts,
Cursed
Sun, Mortal Backlash,
Wardomized. Were there?
Is it Wardomized?
Perhaps.
Can't remember myself.
Should
probably make a note of these things before we do the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I've an A4 page with everything but that detail.
since when were we professional?
Yeah.
But I think that about wraps it up anyway. Metal to the Masses, get your asses down, go to those shows. There could be, I know that a lot of people kind of look at them and go, oh, you know, I don't like this band, I don't like that band, or whatever. I think it's just sometimes it's nice to get out and experience new bands, different bands, and you know, then you can come on and it gives you some context to the shite that we're rambling about on here. So definitely, the other thing is, if anyone's made it this far through the podcast, we'd like to get more people onto the podcast. I would ideally like to have 3 people on the podcast, but obviously we can't have people coming on unless they go to the shows. So if you are down at Metal to the Masses and you'd like to come on here and talk a lot of crap with us about the bands that we're playing, and put a big target on your head for all the bands that you talk shit about, by all means give us a shout, and we'll get you on, and we'll get a next time there will be actual alcohol beers rather than alcohol-free ones. And it'll be good crack. It always is good crack whenever we come around and have a chat and do a podcast. So, yeah, thanks for watching. I guess I'll do all the usual YouTube bullshit of asking you to subscribe and click the like button and leave comments below and all that nonsense. But cheers for watching, and as always, keep listening to the wrong kind of music.